The baby wasn't crying. The kids were freezing. And when the black SUV stopped in the middle of the blizzard, the man who stepped out didn't ask for names. He asked one thing, sharp and furious. Who did this? Because whatever drove a widow and her children into a storm like this had just made a mistake. And it wasn't finished yet. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. The blizzard had swallowed the forest road whole. Sky and ground had merged into one endless, merciless void where direction was a fantasy and time moved only in shivers. The wind tore through the pines like something hunting, something that knew exactly where she was. This was the kind of storm that erased footprints, erased choices, erased futures. Christina Ward stood frozen at the edge of the road, her coat soaked through, her body operating on memory rather than strength. Her lips had cracked and bled. Her fingers were beyond numb, they'd become clumsy, foreign things that barely responded. Her chest felt crushed, as if the cold had crawled inside and wrapped itself around her ribs, squeezing tighter with every breath. In her arms, the newborn lay too still. That terrified her most. The baby's tiny face was pale, lips faintly blue, and Christina kept checking, pressing her frozen cheek against the infant's chest, just to feel the faint flutter of a heartbeat. Still alive, still alive, still alive. Her two other children huddled against her legs. The girl, no older than 6, tried to be brave, but her eyes had gone glassy with exhaustion and cold. The boy, younger, clung to his mother's coat with white-knuckled desperation, as if letting go meant being swallowed by the storm itself. "Mama, are we going home?" the girl whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. Christina had no answer. Home was no longer a place. It was something that had existed 6 weeks ago, before the funeral, before the men came, before the threats turned into something worse than words. The apartment was gone. The phone was dead. The money had disappeared into debts that made no sense, owed to people whose names she'd never heard her husband speak. And when the knocking started hard, insistent, wrong, she'd grabbed her children and run. No plan, no destination, just away. The bus station had been closed. Her car had died 2 miles back. No vehicles had passed in hours, and now this. A road that went nowhere, in a storm that promised nothing but silence. Then it came. At first, it was distant, a low, mechanical growl that didn't belong to the wind. Christina's heart slammed against her ribs. Through the curtain of falling snow, 2 bright circles of light appeared, then the shape behind them. The growl grew louder, deeper, vibrating through the frozen ground beneath her feet. An engine. No engines. The sound was too powerful, too deliberate. The black SUV slowed as it approached, headlights blinding, turning the snowflakes into a swarm of white static. It stopped 10 feet away. The sudden silence was heavier than the storm. Snow continued to fall. But time itself seemed to pause, as if the world were holding its breath. Christina instinctively stepped backward, pulling her children behind her body. Her mind flooded with images, headlines, warnings, stories whispered in kitchens and parking lots. Men in dark cars, men who didn't ask questions, men who made people disappear. The driver's door opened. He stepped out slowly, deliberately, his long black coat hanging open despite the cold. Tattoos crawled up his neck and disappeared beneath his collar, dark ink against skin that seemed untouched by the frost. His hair was slicked back perfectly, face angular and sharp, eyes pale and unreadable. He looked like someone the cold had learned to fear. Behind him, 3 more men emerged from the vehicle, silent, disciplined, faces obscured by shadow and snow. One was older, gray-haired, with the posture of a soldier. Another was younger, broad-shouldered, hands tucked into his coat pockets. The third stood slightly apart, watching the tree line as if threats could come from anywhere. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They simply were. Like sentinels, the man in front studied her. Not with lust, not with pity, with something colder. His gaze moved from Christina's face to the newborn in her arms, to the 2 children clinging to her legs, their torn gloves and blue-tinged lips. He took in the soaked coat, the trembling, the frostbite creeping across her knuckles. Then his eyes narrowed. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, but it carried a weight that made Christina's stomach drop. Who did this? The question hung in the air like smoke. Christina didn't understand. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her mind scrambled. Who did what? What does he mean? What does he want? The man took one step closer, snow crunching beneath expensive shoes that had no business being out here. Who, he repeated, slower now, each word deliberate, did this to you? Christina's breath hitched. The question wasn't what she expected. It wasn't who are you or what are you doing here. It was something else entirely, something that assumed blame, assumed a crime, assumed someone was responsible. And that assumption changed everything, because he was right. Someone had done this. Her voice came out broken, barely a whisper. I don't know what your children are freezing. He cut her off, not with anger but with fact. His eyes flicked to the baby again, and something shifted in his expression. Not softness, but recognition. How long have you been out here? Hours, maybe. Christina's thoughts were sluggish, her words stumbling. My car stopped. I tried to walk, but where were you going? Anywhere. The truth spilled out. Anywhere that wasn't there. The man studied her for another long moment. Then he turned his head slightly, not taking his eyes off her, and spoke to the men behind him. Heat. Now. One of them moved immediately, returning to the SUV. The engine roared back to life. The man in the black coat began unbuttoning it. Christina's fear spiked. What are you? He removed the coat in one smooth motion and stepped forward. Before she could flinch, he draped it over her shoulders, the weight of it sudden and foreign. It smelled like leather and something expensive she couldn't name. Get them inside, he said, nodding toward the SUV. We're not doing this here. I don't even know who you. His pale eyes locked onto hers. Domingo Duran. He said it like an answer to a question she hadn't asked. And you're not dying on this road. It wasn't a promise. It was a command. Christina didn't move. Her body had locked in place, caught between the animal instinct to run and the terrible knowledge that she couldn't. Not anymore. Her legs were lead. Her children were fading. The newborn in her arms had stopped making any sound at all. Domingo Duran stood waiting, snow gathering on his dark hair, his shirt sleeves already dusted white. He didn't shiver, didn't rush her. He simply watched, as if he had all the time in the world and she had none. Behind him, the SUV's passenger door hung open, warmth pouring out in visible waves that made the falling snow twist and dance. Mama? The little girl's voice cracked. I'm cold. The words broke something in Christina. She took one stumbling step forward, then another. Domingo moved aside, not touching her, not guiding her, just creating space. The older enforcer, gray-haired, weathered, appeared at her elbow, and Christina flinched. Easy, the man said quietly, his voice rough but not unkind. Just help with the little ones. He crouched down to the boy, who had buried his face in Christina's coat. Hey, buddy, you like hot chocolate? The boy didn't answer, but his grip loosened slightly. The enforcer scooped him up with practiced ease, and the boy didn't resist, too exhausted, too cold to care anymore. The girl followed, climbing into the SUV on her own, her movements slow and mechanical. Christina climbed in last, cradling the baby against her chest. The moment the heat hit her skin, pain flared sharp, burning, like being stabbed with 1,000 needles. She gasped. That's the frostbite waking up, the gray-haired man said from the driver's seat. It'll hurt worse before it gets better. Domingo slid into the passenger seat, his white shirt stark against the black interior. He didn't look back at her. Instead, he pulled out his phone, typing something with quick, precise movements. The girl sat, pressed against Christina's side, staring at the men with wide, unblinking eyes. The boy had already started to nod off, his head lolling against the enforcer beside him, the broad-shouldered one who hadn't spoken yet. Christina wanted to pull her children away from these strangers, to put herself between them and danger. But the warmth, the stillness, the sudden absence of wind, it was dismantling her piece by piece. Where are we going? She managed, her voice hoarse. Domingo didn't turn around. Somewhere safe. I don't know you. No. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, those pale eyes catching hers. But you know what you were running from. Christina's stomach dropped. How did you... Because people don't end up on that road by accident. He pocketed his phone. And women with 3 kids don't walk into a blizzard because they want to. The girl tugged on Christina's sleeve. Mama, who are these people? Christina had no answer that wouldn't sound like a lie. Domingo turned slightly in his seat, looking past Christina to the girl. His expression didn't soften exactly, it simply became still, controlled. What's your name? He asked. The girl hesitated, then whispered, Lily. Lily. He repeated it like he was memorizing it. You did good out there. Taking care of your brother. That's hard. Lily blinked, surprised. Domingo's gaze shifted to the boy, now sleeping, then to the baby in Christina's arms. He stared at the infant for a long moment, too long. Something tightened in his jaw. How old? He asked. 3 weeks, Christina whispered. The gray-haired driver swore under his breath. Domingo's voice dropped, quieter now, but with an edge that made the air feel thinner. 3 weeks. And someone thought it was smart to put you on the street. It wasn't a question. Christina felt tears sting her eyes, hot and unwelcome. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Domingo turned back around, facing forward. The question is, who made yours for you? The SUV began to move, tires crunching through snow with steady, confident traction. The storm was still raging outside, but inside, the world had become small, contained, almost surreal. Christina watched the back of Domingo's head, the tattoos on his neck shifting slightly as he tilted his head to look out the window. She tried to reconcile the man who had given her his coat with the man whose name she'd never heard, but somehow felt she should have. Why did you stop? She asked. Silence. Then, without looking back, because you were there. It wasn't an answer. Or maybe it was the only one he had. The broad-shouldered enforcer beside her finally spoke, his voice low and even. Boss doesn't like mess. Domingo shot him a look in the mirror. The enforcer shrugged slightly. What? It's true. Mess, Christina repeated, the word bitter in her mouth. Is that what I am? No. Domingo's voice cut through the cabin like a blade. You're what happens when someone makes a mess and doesn't clean it up. He pulled his phone out again, staring at the screen. His thumb hovered over something. Then he made a call. It rang once. I need a location prepped, Domingo said, his tone flat, businesslike. 3 kids, medical on standby, full heat, supplies, the usual. A pause. No, not another word. Just do it. He hung up. Christina felt the weight of the coat still draped over her shoulders. Too big, too expensive, too surreal. She looked down at the baby in her arms, the tiny chest rising and falling more steadily now, color slowly returning to the small face. I can't pay you, she said quietly. Domingo didn't respond. I don't have anything, Christina continued, her voice shaking. No money, no house, nothing. I can't. Did I ask you for anything? Domingo's eyes found hers again in the mirror. Christina swallowed. No, then stop talking about payment. The finality in his voice left no room for argument. Lily leaned closer to Christina, her small voice barely audible. Mama, are they going to hurt us? Christina opened her mouth, but Domingo answered first. No. One word. No explanation. No reassurance. Just certainty. Lily seemed to accept it in a way Christina couldn't. The girl closed her eyes, her head resting against Christina's arm, and within minutes, she too had fallen asleep. Christina sat in the warm silence, holding her children, wearing a stranger's coat, riding in a vehicle she didn't recognize toward a destination she didn't know. And for the first time in 6 weeks, she wasn't running. She was being carried. The question was whether that made her safer or something else entirely. The SUV moved through the storm like it owned the road. Christina watched the world blur past the window white on white, trees bending under the weight of snow, the occasional flash of a road sign swallowed by darkness. Time felt strange, elastic. Minutes could have been hours. She'd lost all sense of it. Lily and the boy Thomas, she should call him Thomas, not just the boy, slept against her, their breathing finally steady, their skin no longer that terrifying shade of blue. The baby stirred occasionally, making small sounds that felt like miracles. She was afraid to close her eyes, afraid that if she did, she'd wake up back on that road. Or worse, she wouldn't wake up at all. The gray-haired driver broke the silence first. Name's Jerome, he said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. In case you were wondering. Christina nodded, unsure what else to do. That's Foster. Jerome nodded toward the broad-shouldered man beside her. And the quiet one in the back is Ruiz. She hadn't even noticed the third enforcer, seated in the rear cargo area, still watching the road behind them as if threats could materialize from the storm itself. Domingo already introduced himself. Jerome continued, a hint of something amusement, warning, in his voice. But you probably figured that out. I didn't, actually, Christina admitted. I've never heard that name before. The silence that followed was heavier than it should have been. Jerome and Foster exchanged a glance. Even Ruiz looked up. Domingo said nothing. but his shoulders shifted slightly, a tell so small, Christina almost missed it. "Where are you from?" Foster asked carefully. "Here, the city. I've lived here my whole life." Christina's arms tightened around the baby. "Why?" "No reason," Domingo said flatly, ending the conversation before it could continue. But Christina caught the look Jerome gave him, something between concern and confusion. The SUV turned off the main road onto something narrower, better plowed. Industrial buildings appeared through the snow, then residential streets, then finally, a gated property with high walls and security cameras that tracked their approach. The gate opened without anyone pressing a button. They pulled into an underground garage, bright and pristine, the storm suddenly absent as if it had never existed. The concrete was dry, the air was warm. The silence felt wrong after so much wind. Domingo stepped out first. "Bring them inside. Medical room." Jerome moved quickly, opening Christina's door. She climbed out on shaking legs, still holding the baby, and Foster helped Thomas down while Lily clung to Christina's coat. "Where are we?" Christina asked. "Safe," Domingo said without looking back. They walked through a corridor, clean, modern, utterly silent, and into a room that looked more like a private clinic than anything else. Examination table, medical equipment, cabinets stocked with supplies. A woman in scrubs was already waiting, middle-aged with kind eyes and steady hands. "I'm Dr. Ortega," she said gently, approaching Christina. "I'm going to check the children, make sure there's no serious frostbite or hypothermia complications. Is that all right?" Christina wanted to say no, wanted to grab her children and run again. But Thomas's fingers were still too pale. Lily's lips were cracked and bleeding. And the baby, "Yes," Christina whispered. "Please." Dr. Ortega worked efficiently, checking vitals, examining extremities, asking questions in a calm, professional tone that somehow made Christina want to cry. The children were malnourished, dehydrated, suffering from exposure, but alive, treatable. "They'll need rest, warmth, and proper nutrition," Dr. Ortega said, wrapping Thomas's hands in careful bandages. "But they're going to be okay." Christina's knees buckled. Foster caught her before she hit the ground, guiding her to a chair. "Easy. When's the last time you ate?" Christina couldn't remember. "Get her food," Domingo said from the doorway. "And water, now." Foster left immediately. Domingo stepped into the room, his pale eyes moving over the children with that same unsettling focus, not intrusive, not predatory, just observant, like he was cataloging damage. "Dr. Ortega," he said quietly. "How bad?" "They'll recover fully with proper care," she replied, adjusting Lily's IV line. "But another hour in that storm?" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Domingo's jaw tightened. He turned to Christina. "I need you to tell me what happened." Christina looked at her children, Lily already asleep again. Thomas curled up on the examination table, the baby finally breathing peacefully in a warmed bassinet. "I don't even know where to start," she said. "Start with your husband." The words hit like a slap. Christina's head snapped up. "How did you—" "You're wearing a wedding ring," Domingo said. "But you said I when you talked about running, not we. Past tense in everything you didn't say." He crossed his arms. "So where is he?" "Dead." The word tasted like ash. 6 weeks ago. Something flickered in Domingo's expression. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. "How?" "Car accident. They said it was an accident." Christina's hands twisted in her lap. But then the men came. "What men?" "I don't know their names. I'd never seen them before." Christina's voice started to shake. "They showed up at the funeral. Said my husband owed money. Said he'd been working for people who expected debts to be honored even after death." Domingo went very still. "What kind of work?" "I don't know. He never told me. He said it was consulting, security, something corporate." Christina's voice broke. "I didn't ask questions. We needed the money, and he always came home, so I thought, how much did they say he owed?" $50,000. Christina laughed bitterly. $50,000 I've never seen. For work I didn't know existed. From people whose names I've never heard. "They give you any names?" Christina shook her head. "Just that the debt was real. That it would be collected. One way or another." Domingo's eyes darkened. "Did they threaten the children?" Christina's silence was answer enough. "When?" "A week after the funeral. Then again 2 weeks later. Then they came to the apartment 3 days ago. They didn't knock. They just—" She wrapped her arms around herself. "I grabbed the kids and left through the fire escape." Domingo pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Describe them. One was tall, bald, had a scar across his eyebrow. The other was shorter, heavy build, tattoos on his hands, Russian letters. I think. Domingo stopped typing. Jerome, standing in the doorway now, swore quietly. What? Christina asked. Do you know them? Domingo looked up, and for the first time, Christina saw something dangerous move behind his eyes. Yeah, he said softly. I know exactly who they work for. Christina's heart stopped. Who? She breathed. Who do they work for? Domingo slipped his phone into his pocket, his expression unreadable. It doesn't matter right now. It doesn't. Christina stood up too fast, the room tilting slightly. They threatened my children. They drove us into a blizzard. How does it not matter? Because right now, Domingo said, his voice level but firm, your kids need sleep, food, and warmth. The rest comes after. Christina wanted to scream, wanted to demand answers, but Thomas whimpered in his sleep, and Lily's small hand twitched beneath the blanket, and the fight drained out of her as quickly as it had risen. She sank back into the chair. Dr. Ortega approached with a sympathetic look. He's right, you know. Your body is running on adrenaline and fear. When that wears off, you'll collapse. Let me at least check your vitals. Christina submitted to the examination numbly, blood pressure elevated, signs of malnutrition, early-stage frostbite on 3 fingers. Doctor. Ortega worked in silence, bandaging, administering IV fluids, offering quiet instructions about rest and recovery. Foster returned with a tray soup, bread, water, and what looked like hot tea. The smell alone made Christina's stomach clench with sudden, desperate hunger. Eat slowly, Dr. Ortega warned. Your system needs to adjust. Christina forced herself to take small sips of the soup. It was rich, warm, real. She couldn't remember the last time she'd tasted something that wasn't from a gas station or a food bank. Domingo watched from the doorway, arms crossed, face carved from stone. He didn't speak, didn't move, just observed with that same unnerving intensity. Finally, Christina couldn't take it anymore. What happens now? Now? Domingo pushed off the doorframe. You and the kids get moved to a room upstairs. You sleep. You recover. That's it. And then what? Christina's voice rose despite herself. You expect me to believe you're just helping out of the kindness of your heart? The room went quiet. Jerome shifted uncomfortably. Foster suddenly found the floor very interesting. Domingo's pale eyes locked onto Christina's. What do you think I want from you? The question hung there, sharp and dangerous. Christina swallowed hard. I don't know. That's what scares me. Good. Domingo stepped closer. Not threatening, but deliberate. Fear keeps you smart. But let me be clear about something. I don't trade in favors that involve women and children. I don't take what isn't offered freely, and I sure as hell don't collect debts from people who don't owe them. Then why? Because there are rules. Domingo cut her off, his voice dropping to something colder. Rules about who gets touched and who doesn't. Rules about what's off limits. And someone broke them. Christina stared at him, trying to understand. You're talking about my husband's debt. I'm talking about whoever sent those men to your door. Domingo's jaw tightened. Because that kind of collection doesn't happen in my city without permission, and I sure as hell didn't give it. The implication crashed over Christina like a wave. Your city, she repeated slowly. I mean what I mean. Domingo turned to Jerome. Get the East Wing ready. 3 beds, supplies, everything they need. Already done, boss. Domingo nodded, then looked back at Christina. You're not a prisoner here. You want to leave tomorrow, you leave. But tonight, your kids sleep somewhere warm, and nobody comes through that door unless I say so. Christina's throat tightened. I can't pay you back. Not now. Maybe not ever. Did I ask you to? No, but... Then stop trying to negotiate something that isn't for sale. Domingo's voice softened fractionally. You don't owe me anything, Christina. Not money, not loyalty, not gratitude. You owe your kids a chance to recover. That's it. Christina felt something crack inside her chest. She'd spent 6 weeks bracing for the next blow, the next threat, the next ultimatum. She'd forgotten what it felt like when someone simply helped. Why? The word came out broken. Why do you even care? Domingo was silent for a long moment. Then, because children don't choose their parents' mistakes, and they sure as hell don't deserve to freeze for them. He walked to the bassinet where the baby slept, looking down at the tiny, peaceful face. Something shifted in his expression, something old and buried. No one touches children, he said quietly, almost to himself. Not in my city. Not ever. It sounded like a vow. Dr. Ortega cleared her throat gently. The children are stable. I'd like to move them to a more comfortable space where they can rest properly. Domingo nodded. Jerome. Foster, help her. The men moved with practiced efficiency, Jerome carefully lifting Thomas while Foster gathered the medical supplies. Dr. Ortega wheeled the bassinet, and Lily stirred, reaching for Christina. It's okay, baby, Christina whispered, standing on shaking legs. We're just going somewhere safe. Promise? Lily's voice was small, fragile. Christina looked at Domingo, who stood watching with those unreadable pale eyes. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. I promise, Christina said. They moved through the corridors wider now, warmer, with actual windows showing the storm still raging outside. The east wing was nothing like Christina expected. Not a cell, not a warehouse, not some cold, industrial space. It was a suite. 3 beds with clean white linens, a private bathroom with fresh towels, a small kitchenette stocked with food, soft lighting that didn't hurt to look at, and heat blessed. Steady heat that made Christina's eyes sting with relief. Jerome and Foster laid Thomas and Lily in their beds with surprising gentleness. Dr. Ortega positioned the bassinet where Christina could see it from anywhere in the room. I'll check on them every few hours, Dr. Ortega said. But they should sleep through the night. Their bodies need it. Christina nodded, unable to form words. One by one, they filed out Jerome, Foster, Dr. Ortega. Domingo was the last to leave, pausing at the door. There's a phone on the table, he said without looking back. You need anything? Press 1. Someone will answer. Domingo, Christina's voice caught. He turned slightly, just enough that she could see his profile. Thank you, she whispered. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, get some sleep, Christina. Tomorrow we figure out who thought they could do this without consequences. The door closed with a soft click. Christina stood alone in the warm, quiet room, listening to her children breathe. And for the first time in 6 weeks, she let herself cry. Not from fear, from something dangerously close to hope. Domingo didn't go to his office. He stood in the hallway outside the east wing for longer than he should have, staring at the closed door, listening to the silence that meant Christina and her children were finally resting. 3 weeks old. The baby was 3 weeks old. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Boss. Jerome's voice came from behind him, quiet and careful. You good? Domingo didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was flat. Conference room. 10 minutes. Everyone who matters. Jerome nodded and disappeared down the corridor, pulling out his phone. Domingo walked slowly toward his office, each step measured, controlled. He passed guards who straightened immediately, staff who averted their eyes, cameras that tracked his movement with silent diligence. His empire, his structure, his rules, and someone had broken them. He entered his office, dark wood, minimal furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the storm still battering the city, and moved straight to the bar. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, stared at it for a moment, then set it down untouched. Alcohol dulled edges. He needed his edges sharp. His phone buzzed. A message from Foster. Checked the databases. Bald guy with the scar is Alexei Volkov's crew. The other one, too. Confirmed. Domingo's knuckles went white around the phone. Volkov. Of course it was Volkov. Another message, this time from Ruiz. Word on the street is Volkov's been freelancing collections. Small stuff. Under the radar. Didn't think it warranted reporting. Didn't warrant reporting. Domingo typed back with controlled precision. Conference room. Now. He grabbed his suit jacket from the back of his chair and shrugged it on, fingers working the buttons with mechanical efficiency. He checked his reflection in the window, hair still perfect despite the storm, tattoos visible at his collar, eyes cold and focused. This was the version of himself that made men confess without being asked. He left the office and walked toward the conference room, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. He could hear movement ahead, voices being lowered, chairs scraping, the sudden quiet that preceded judgment. When he opened the door, 12 men were already seated around the long table, his inner circle. Jerome at his right hand, Foster beside him, Ruiz across the table, then the others lieutenants, who controlled different territories, different operations, different revenue streams. Men who had proven themselves through loyalty, competence, and the ability to follow the rules that kept this empire from devouring itself. One chair was conspicuously empty. Domingo didn't sit. He stood at the head of the table, hands resting on the back of his chair, and let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "Someone want to tell me," he said quietly, "why a woman with 3 children, one of them a newborn, was on a forest road in a blizzard tonight?" No one spoke. "Anyone?" Domingo's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. A younger lieutenant, Tomas, ambitious, still learning, cleared his throat. "Boss, if this is about unsanctioned collections..." "It's not about unsanctioned collections." Domingo's eyes cut to him. "It's about who got collected." Tomas went pale. "Her husband worked for someone in this room," Domingo continued, his tone surgical. "Small jobs, security transport, low-level logistics. He died 6 weeks ago in what the police called an accident." He paused. Convenient timing, considering he'd just finished a job that went sideways. Jerome shifted. "Boss, we looked into that. Clean crash, no evidence of tampering." "Maybe." Domingo's gaze swept the table. "But what happened after wasn't clean at all. Because someone decided that a dead man's debt was worth collecting from his widow, from his children." The room was silent enough to hear breathing. $50,000, Domingo said. "That's what they told her she owed. 50,000 for work she didn't know about, deals she wasn't part of, arrangements she never agreed to." He leaned forward slightly. "So I'll ask one more time, who authorized collection on a civilian widow with 3 kids? The empty chair seemed to grow larger. Foster spoke up, his voice rough. "Gregor hasn't reported in today. Missed 2 check-ins. Gregor." Domingo repeated the name like it tasted bad. "My lieutenant. The one who handles debt collection and enforcement." He straightened. "The one who knows, because I've said it a dozen times, that women and children are off limits unless they're active participants." "Boss," Tomas started. "Was she?" Domingo's voice cracked like a whip. "Was Christina Ward moving product? Laundering money? Running operations?" "No, sir." "Then why?" Domingo said, each word deliberate. "Did Alexei Volkov's men show up at her apartment? Why did they threaten her children? Why did she end up on that road?" Ruiz cleared his throat. "Volkov's been doing freelance work, collection jobs for anyone paying. We thought it was outside our territory, so..." "You thought..." Domingo's laugh was cold. "You thought it was fine for someone to use my city, my connections, my infrastructure to terrorize a woman whose husband died working for us." The temperature in the room dropped. "Here's what you didn't think," Domingo continued. "You didn't think about what it means when a 3-week-old baby nearly freezes to death because someone wanted to squeeze $50,000 out of a corpse. You didn't think about what that says about this organization, about our rules, about what we allow." He pulled out his phone and set it on the table. A photo appeared on the screen, Christina holding her children in the snow, taken from the SUV's dashcam. The image was stark, brutal, undeniable. "That," Domingo said, "is what happens when we ignore our own standards." Jerome leaned forward. "Boss, what do you want us to do?" "Find Gregor. Find out if he authorized this. Find out if he knew Volkov was collecting in our territory." Domingo's voice went quiet again, which was somehow worse than if he'd shouted. "And find out who else thought this was acceptable." "And Volkov?" Domingo's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Volkov gets a visit. Tonight. I want to know who hired him, what the real debt was, and why he thought children were fair game. You want us to bring him in?" "No." Domingo picked up his phone. "I'll handle Volkov personally. You find Gregor." The men stood to leave, but Domingo's voice stopped them. "One more thing." They turned. "This isn't about the money. This isn't about territory. This is about the fact that someone in our organization thought fear was a substitute for discipline." He looked at each of them in turn. "Fear is loud. Responsibility is quiet. And right now we've been too loud for too long." He dismissed them with a nod. As they filed out, Jerome lingered. "You really going after Volkov tonight? In this storm?" Domingo stared at the photo still on his phone. Christina's terrified face, Lily clinging to her coat, Thomas barely standing, the baby too still. "Yeah," he said softly. "I am. Because some lines, once crossed, required immediate correction. And Alexei Volkov had just crossed the only one that mattered. The storm hadn't let up. If anything, it had grown worse, wind howling like something alive, snow falling so thick the headlights barely cut through it. The SUV moved through the streets like a shadow, wipers working overtime, the world outside reduced to fleeting impressions of buildings and streetlights. Domingo sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, his face carved from stone. Jerome drove in silence. Foster and Ruiz sat in the back, weapons checked, faces grim. This wasn't a negotiation they were heading toward. It was a reckoning. "Address is confirmed," Ruiz said, checking his phone. "Warehouse district. Volkov's using it as a base for his freelance operations. 3 guards outside, maybe more inside." "How many total?" Domingo asked quietly. "Best guess? 8 to 10. Domingo nodded once. "We go in fast. No drawn-out theatrics. I want Volkov alive and talking. Everyone else is negotiable." "Understood." The warehouse came into view, a squat, industrial building with rusted siding and broken windows, the kind of place that had been abandoned by legitimate business years ago. 2 men stood outside smoking, shoulders hunched against the cold, rifles slung casually across their backs. Sloppy. Domingo's jaw tightened. Men who got comfortable got careless, and careless men made mistakes that cost other people everything. Jerome pulled the SUV to a stop 2 blocks away, engine idling. "How you want to play this?" "Front door." Domingo checked his weapon, a sleek Glock, custom grip, already loaded. "They see us coming. They'll either run or fight. Either way, we're faster." They exited the vehicle into the blizzard, the cold hitting like a physical blow. Domingo barely felt it. His focus had narrowed to a single point: the warehouse, the men inside, the answers he needed. They moved quickly, efficiently, years of working together making words unnecessary. Foster circled left, Ruiz right, while Domingo and Jerome approached head-on. The guards noticed them too late. "Hey, who the hell?" Foster hit the first one from behind, a quick strike that dropped him without a sound. Ruiz disabled the second with practiced efficiency. Both men were zip-tied and gagged before they could even think about shouting. Domingo didn't break stride. He reached the door, tested it unlocked, another sign of sloppiness, and pushed it open. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, space heaters glowing orange in the corners, providing just enough warmth to make it bearable. Crates were stacked haphazardly, and in the center, around a makeshift table, sat 5 men playing cards. They looked up as Domingo entered. For a moment, no one moved. Then Alexei Volkov, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, stood slowly, recognition dawning on his face. "Duran, what brings you to my humble operation?" "Humble." Domingo stopped 10 feet away, hands relaxed at his sides. "That's one word for it." Volkov's men were already reaching for weapons, but Volkov raised a hand, stopping them. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm assuming this isn't a social call." "You're smart." Domingo tilted his head slightly. "So let me ask you a smart question. Who hired you to collect on a dead man's debt?" The smile faltered. "I handle a lot of collections. You'll need to be more specific." "Christina Ward." Domingo's voice went cold. "Widow. 3 kids, one of them 3 weeks old. You sent your boys to her apartment, threatened her, forced her to run." Volkov's expression shifted, not guilt, but calculation. "That was just business. Client wanted their money, I provided the service." "Business." Domingo repeated the word slowly. "You call terrorizing a woman with a newborn business?" "I call collecting debts business. Yeah." Volkov shrugged. She knew the score. Her husband worked for dangerous people, died owing dangerous money. That's on him, not me. Who was the client? That's confidential. Domingo's hand moved to his weapon. Behind him, Jerome, Foster, and Ruiz did the same. The temperature in the warehouse plummeted. Volkov's men tensed, but their boss kept his composure. "You really want to start a war over one woman, Duran?" "I don't want to start anything." Domingo's voice was surgical. "I want to finish something. Someone used my city, my territory, my infrastructure to collect a debt that didn't exist. And you," he stepped closer, "were stupid enough to think children were acceptable leverage. I never touched the kids. You didn't have to." Domingo's eyes were ice. "You put them on the street in a blizzard. You made a 3-week-old baby fight for every breath. That's the same thing." Volkov's jaw tightened. "Listen, I was hired to do a job. I did it. If you've got a problem with who hired you," the words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Volkov stared at Domingo, weighing his options, calculating odds. Finally, he sighed. "Gregor Sokolov, your lieutenant. Said the husband had stolen from an operation, died before making it right, and the debt needed collecting one way or another." The name hung in the air like poison. Jerome swore under his breath. Foster's hand tightened on his weapon. Domingo felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. "Gregor hired you directly?" "Yeah. Paid half up front, promised the other half when the debt was cleared. Volkov's smile returned, thin and ugly. Seemed like easy money. Guess it wasn't. Guess not. Domingo raised his weapon in one smooth motion, barrel aimed directly at Volkov's chest. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me every detail, dates, amounts, instructions. Everything Gregor told you. Then you're going to shut down every collection operation in my city and never come back. And if I don't, then your men find you in pieces, and this warehouse becomes a crime scene investigation that lasts 6 months. Domingo's finger rested on the trigger. Your choice. Volkov's composure finally cracked. He glanced at his men, outgunned, outmaneuvered, outclassed, and raised his hands slowly. Fine, I'll talk. Smart man. Domingo lowered his weapon fractionally. Start with when Gregor first contacted you. Volkov talked for 15 minutes. Straight dates, meetings, the exact instructions Gregor had given, including the explicit order to make it hurt enough that she understands consequences. He talked about the 50,000, which wasn't real debt but penalty collection, punishment for the husband's supposed betrayal. With every word, Domingo's expression grew colder. When Volkov finally finished, Domingo stood silent for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. It rang twice. It's me, Domingo said. Gregor Sokolov. Find him. Bring him to the estate. I don't care where he is or what he's doing. You have 2 hours. He hung up. Volkov watched nervously. So, we good? No. Domingo's voice was flat. We're not good. You leave this city tonight. You don't come back. You don't take jobs here. You don't even drive through here. You forget this place exists. And there is no if. Domingo turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. That 50,000 you were supposed to collect? Consider it your exit fee. You owe it to Christina Ward. You've got 1 week to deliver it, cash, to a location I'll send you. Volkov's face went red. Domingo looked back, and whatever Volkov saw in his eyes made the words die in his throat. 1 week, Domingo repeated. Or I come back. He walked out into the storm, his men following. The question had been answered. Now came the harder part, dealing with the man who'd authorized it all. His own lieutenant. His responsibility, his failure. Christina woke to silence. Not the violent, howling silence of the storm, but something softer, the quiet of a space where danger wasn't constantly pressed against the windows. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, her body aching in places she'd forgotten could hurt. Then memory rushed back. She sat up quickly, heart hammering, and looked immediately to the bassinet. The baby was asleep, chest rising and falling in steady, peaceful rhythm. Lily and Thomas were in their beds, tangled in clean white sheets. Color finally returned to their faces. Real color, not the terrible blue-gray of frostbite and fear. Christina's breath shuddered out of her. They were alive. They were warm. They were safe. For now. She stood slowly, wincing as muscles protested, and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking, pale gray light filtering through clouds that had finally stopped dumping snow. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried beneath white. She'd survived the night. They all had. A soft knock at the door made her tense. Yes, it's Dr. Ortega. May I come in? Christina opened the door to find the doctor holding a tray, coffee, toast, fruit, and what looked like oatmeal. The smell alone made Christina's stomach clench with hunger. I thought you might be awake, Dr. Ortega said gently. How are you feeling? Sore, confused, alive. Christina stepped aside to let her in. How are they? Better than they have any right to be. Dr. Ortega set the tray down and moved to check on Thomas first, gently examining his bandaged hands. Children are resilient. Their bodies are already starting to recover. Lily's frostbite was superficial, she'll be fine. Thomas needs another few days of monitoring, but I'm optimistic. And the baby? Strong. Dr. Ortega smiled. Stronger than you'd think. Another few hours in that storm, though. She trailed off, the implication clear. Christina felt tears prick her eyes. She'd been so close to losing them. All of them. You should eat, Dr. Ortega said, nodding to the tray. And then rest some more. Your body went through trauma too. Christina wanted to argue, but her legs were already shaking. She sat and forced herself to eat slowly, each bite feeling surreal. Real food, hot coffee, safety. It felt like a dream she'd wake from at any moment. Where's Domingo? The question came out before she could stop it. Dr. Ortega's expression shifted slightly, not quite concern, but something careful. He had business to attend to. He'll be back later. Business. Christina wondered what kind of business a man like Domingo Duran conducted at dawn after pulling a stranger from a blizzard. She didn't ask. The day passed in strange, quiet increments. Thomas woke first, disoriented and frightened until he saw Christina. Then he cried not from pain but from relief. She held him until he calmed, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Lily woke next, quieter, more withdrawn. She ate when offered food but didn't speak much. Just stayed close to Christina, watching the door as if expecting someone to burst through it. The baby woke crying, hungry and healthy, and Christina felt something unclench in her chest. She fed him, changed him, held him close, and let herself believe just for a moment that maybe they'd be okay. Dr. Ortega checked in twice more. Jerome brought fresh clothes, simple, clean, exactly the right sizes. Foster delivered toys for the children, books, coloring supplies. No one asked for anything in return. No one made demands. It was unsettling in its kindness. Afternoon light was filtering through the windows when Christina heard footsteps in the hallway, measured, deliberate, familiar. The door opened. Domingo stepped inside, still wearing the same dark clothes from the night before, though now they looked lived in, wrinkled. His hair was slightly disheveled, and there was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. He looked tired. And something else. Something heavier. "How are they?" he asked quietly. "Better." Christina stood instinctively, putting herself between him and the children even though he hadn't moved closer. "Dr. Ortega says they'll recover fully." "Good." Domingo's gaze moved past her to the beds where Lily and Thomas were coloring, to the bassinet where the baby slept. Something in his expression softened fractionally. "That's good." Lily looked up from her coloring book, her small face serious. She stared at Domingo for a long moment, then slowly set down her crayon and climbed off the bed. Christina tensed. "Lily." But Lily walked right up to Domingo and stopped in front of him, tilting her head back to look up at his face. She was so small compared to him, tiny, fragile, fearless. "Are we still in trouble?" she asked quietly. The question hit the room like a gunshot. Domingo went very still. For a moment, he didn't react at all, just stood there, this dangerous man in his expensive clothes and visible tattoos, staring down at a 6-year-old girl who'd asked the question that mattered most. Then, slowly, deliberately, he knelt. It brought him down to Lily's eye level, made him less towering, less overwhelming. His pale eyes met hers directly, and when he spoke, his voice was gentler than Christina had ever heard it. "No," he said. "You're not in trouble. You never were." Lily studied his face with the unsettling intensity only children possess. "Promise?" "I promise." "What about the bad men?" Lily's voice trembled slightly. "The ones who came to our house?" Domingo's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "They won't come back." "How do you know?" "Because I told them they can't." Domingo paused, then added, "And when I tell people things, they listen." Lily considered this, then nodded slowly. "Okay." She turned and walked back to her coloring, as if the entire conversation had settled everything in her world. But for Christina, watching from across the room, something cracked open inside her chest. Because she'd seen it the way Domingo had knelt without hesitation, the way he'd looked at Lily not with impatience or condescension but with something that looked dangerously close to pain, the way he'd promised her safety and made it sound like an unbreakable vow. Domingo stood slowly, his composure carefully rebuilt. But when his eyes met Christina's, she saw it again, that flicker of something old and buried, something that had been broken long before she'd stumbled into his path. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Outside?" Christina glanced at her children, all occupied, all safe, then nodded. She followed him into the hallway, the door closing softly behind them. Domingo walked a few paces away, then stopped, his back to her. His shoulders were rigid, hands clenched at his sides. "I found out who did this," he said without turning around. "Who sent those men to your apartment? Who invented the debt? Who decided you and your children were acceptable casualties?" Christina's heart stopped. "Who?" "Someone who worked for me." Domingo's voice was flat, emotionless. "Someone I trusted to follow rules, to understand what lines can't be crossed." "What are you going to do?" Domingo finally turned to face her. His expression was carved from ice, but his eyes were fire. "What needs to be done?" he said quietly. "So that no one ever makes this mistake again." Christina should have been afraid, should have recoiled from the promise of violence in his voice. Instead, she felt something else entirely: relief. Because for the first time in 6 weeks, someone was angry on her behalf. Someone was willing to make the people who'd hurt her children face consequences. "Thank you," she whispered. Domingo shook his head slowly. "Don't thank me yet. This is my mess to clean up, my failure to fix. It's not your—" "It is." His voice was final. "And it will be handled." He walked past her, footsteps echoing down the corridor, leaving Christina standing alone in the hallway. Behind the door, she heard Lily laugh at something Thomas had drawn. The sound was small, fragile, impossibly precious, and Christina realized with sudden, terrifying clarity that Domingo Duran wasn't just helping them, he was protecting them. There was a difference, and that difference might be the only thing standing between her children and the darkness that had been hunting them. 3 days had passed since the blizzard. 3 days of warmth, food, and safety that felt more fragile with each passing hour. Christina stood at the window of the East Wing suite, watching snow melt in the pale afternoon sun. The world outside looked clean, pristine, as if the storm had washed away all evidence of what had happened on that road. But Christina knew better. Some things didn't wash away. Behind her, Thomas was building a tower with blocks. Foster had brought wooden, hand-carved, expensive. Lily sat nearby reading a picture book, her voice soft as she sounded out words. The baby slept peacefully in the bassinet, gaining weight, growing stronger. They looked like normal children. Christina wondered if they'd ever be normal again. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in." Jerome entered, his weathered face carefully neutral. "Got a minute?" Christina glanced at the children, then nodded. "What is it?" Jerome cleared his throat. "Boss wanted me to talk to you about next steps. You've been here 3 days. You're recovered. The kids are stable. Time to figure out what comes next." Christina's stomach dropped. "You mean it's time to leave?" "I mean it's time to decide what you want." Jerome's voice was surprisingly gentle. "You want to leave? We'll help. Set you up somewhere safe. Different city. Clean start. You want to stay in the area? We can arrange that too. Protection, housing, whatever you need. And the price?" Jerome frowned. "There is no price. There's always a price." Christina crossed her arms. "Your boss doesn't strike me as a charity operation." "He's not." Jerome leaned against the doorframe. "But he's also not in the business of holding people hostage. You're free to go, Christina. Today, tomorrow, whenever. No strings." Christina wanted to believe him. But 6 weeks of running had taught her that nothing came without cost. "What about the men who came after me?" she asked. "The debt they claimed I owed? Handled." Jerome's expression darkened slightly. "You don't need to worry about them anymore." "What does handled mean?" Jerome met her eyes directly. "It means they won't be bothering anyone ever again. And the people who sent them know that what they did was unacceptable. Violently unacceptable." Christina's breath caught. "Domingo killed them." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Jerome was quiet for a moment. "Would it matter if he did? Would you feel safer or more afraid?" Christina didn't have an answer. "Look," Jerome continued, "I'm not going to stand here and tell you the boss is a saint. He's not. But he's also not the kind of man who lets innocent people suffer because someone broke the rules. Those men made a choice. They faced consequences. That's how this world works. And what world is that exactly? One where power matters, where rules matter, where the people who protect those rules are the only thing standing between order and chaos." Jerome straightened. "You don't have to like it, but you benefited from it. Your kids are alive because of it." Christina looked at her children safe, warm, alive. He was right. She hated that he was right. "So what do I do now?" she asked quietly. "That's up to you." Jerome pulled an envelope from his jacket. "But this might help." Christina took it carefully. Inside was a check, more money than she'd seen in years. Enough to start over. Enough to breathe. "What is this?" "Severance. Your husband worked for us. He died on a job. This is what he would have been owed if he'd lived to collect." Jerome's voice was matter-of-fact. "Consider it back pay. No debt attached." Christina stared at the check, her hands shaking. "I can't." "You can. You will." Jerome moved toward the door. "Boss also wanted me to tell you something. There's an apartment downtown, already secured. 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, good schools nearby. Lease is paid for 6 months. You want it? It's yours." "Why is he doing this?" Jerome paused, considering. "Because he can. And because he thinks you deserve a chance to live without looking over your shoulder." I don't even know him. No, Jerome agreed. But he knows what it's like when the world decides you're acceptable collateral. And he's decided you're not. He left before Christina could respond. She stood there holding the check, her mind spinning. She could leave. Right now. Take her children and disappear into a new life. No more fear. No more running. But something held her back. Not obligation. Not debt. Curiosity. Because Domingo Duran had saved her life. Asked for nothing. And then walked away. And Christina wanted to understand why. Wanted to know what kind of man operated with such cold precision but knelt for a 6-year-old's question. She folded the check carefully and slipped it into her pocket. That evening, she found Domingo in what Jerome called the garden room, a glass-enclosed space filled with plants, warm and humid, the storm's aftermath visible through the windows. He stood with his back to her, staring out at the snow. Jerome said you arranged an apartment for me, Christina said quietly. Domingo didn't turn. He talked too much sometimes. He said it's mine if I want it. No strings. That's right. Christina stepped closer. Why? Because you need somewhere to live. Domingo's voice was flat. And because staying here isn't sustainable. That's not what I meant. Christina moved until she stood beside him, looking out at the same view. Why help me at all? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you. Domingo was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. My sister had 3 kids, he said. When she died, they ended up in the system, separated, lost. I was too young to do anything about it. Too powerless. His jaw tightened. I swore that if I ever had power, I'd use it better than the people who decided 3 kids didn't matter enough to keep together. Christina's throat tightened. What happened to them? I don't know. I tried to find them later, but the trail went cold. He finally looked at her, those pale eyes carrying decades of weight. So when I see 3 kids about to disappear into the cold because someone decided they were acceptable losses, I stop it. That's all. That's not all, Christina whispered. That's everything. Domingo turned back to the window. The apartment's ready when you are. Take your time. Christina stood there beside him, and for the first time since her husband died, she didn't feel alone. She felt seen. Christina moved into the apartment 2 days later. It was perfect in its simplicity, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that actually worked, windows that locked, heat that didn't require begging a landlord. The building had security cameras. The neighbors were quiet. The school 3 blocks away had availability. It felt like a life. Domingo's men helped move the few belongings Christina had salvaged. Not much, but enough. Jerome supervised. Foster carried boxes, and Ruiz installed additional locks on the doors without being asked. Domingo wasn't there. Christina tried not to feel disappointed. He's got business, Jerome explained when he noticed her looking around. But he made sure everything was set up right. The apartment came furnished not extravagantly, but thoughtfully. Beds with clean linens, a crib for the baby, toys for the children, a fully stocked kitchen, even clothes in the closets, exactly the right sizes. It was too much, and somehow exactly enough. The first night alone felt strange. Christina lay in her own bed, hers, not borrowed, not temporary, and listened to her children sleep in the next room. Real sleep, safe sleep. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt unmoored. For 6 weeks, survival had been her only focus. Run, hide, protect, repeat. Now that the immediate danger had passed, she didn't know what to do with herself. Who was she without fear driving every decision? The question kept her awake until dawn. Days developed a rhythm. Christina enrolled Lily and Thomas in school. The administrators asked questions about records, about previous enrollment, about gaps in attendance. Christina provided careful half-truths, and somehow the paperwork went through without issue. She suspected Domingo's influence but didn't ask. The children adjusted slowly. Thomas had nightmares. Lily was clingy, but gradually, color returned to their world. Laughter, play, normalcy. Christina found work part-time at first, cleaning offices at night while the children slept. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Earned, not given. Independence felt fragile but real. She saw Domingo's people occasionally, Jerome checking in, Foster dropping off groceries that were going to waste anyway, Dr. Ortega stopping by to examine the children just to be thorough, but never Domingo himself. Christina told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't need to see him, that his absence meant freedom, not abandonment. She almost believed it. 4 weeks after moving in, Christina worked up the courage to do something she'd been avoiding. She went to her husband's grave. The cemetery was quiet, snow still piled between headstones, the air cold but no longer vicious. She stood over the simple marker, his name, dates, nothing else, and tried to feel something. Grief, anger, loss. Instead, she felt numb. "I don't know what you were involved in," she said quietly. "I don't know if you meant to protect us or if you just didn't care what happened after you were gone. But your choices almost killed our children." The words hung in the cold air. "I'm not angry," Christina continued, surprised to find it true. "I'm just tired of carrying what you left behind. So I'm letting it go. The debt, the fear, the running. All of it. I'm letting it go." She turned and walked away without looking back. That evening, there was a knock at her door. Christina checked the peephole habit now, automatic, and her breath caught. Domingo stood in the hallway, hands in his coat pockets, looking somehow both out of place and perfectly natural. She opened the door slowly. Hi. He didn't move to enter. "I wanted to check on you, make sure everything's working out." "It is." Christina stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" Domingo hesitated, then nodded. Inside, the apartment looked lived in now. Children's drawings on the refrigerator, toys scattered across the living room, evidence of life. Domingo took it all in silently. "They're asleep," Christina said. "Early bedtime. School nights." "School." Domingo's mouth curved slightly. "That's good. Thanks to you." "Thanks to you," Domingo corrected. "You're the one doing the work. I just removed obstacles." Christina poured 2 cups of coffee without asking, handing him one. They sat at the small kitchen table, the silence comfortable rather than awkward. "I went to see my husband's grave today," Christina said finally. Domingo's expression didn't change. "How was it?" "Clarifying." Christina wrapped her hands around her mug. "I realized I'd been carrying his choices like they were mine. His debts, his secrets, his consequences, but they weren't mine. They never were." "No," Domingo agreed quietly. "They weren't. I wanted to thank you," Christina continued, "for showing me that, for giving me space to figure out who I am without fear. You don't owe me thanks." "I know. That's why I'm giving it anyway." Christina met his eyes. "You didn't have to do any of this, but you did, and it mattered." Domingo set down his coffee carefully. "I should go." "Why?" The question stopped him. "Because staying longer than necessary creates expectations," he said. "And expectations create obligations. I don't want you to feel obligated." "What if I just want you to stay?" Christina asked softly. Domingo looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing past the words to something deeper. Then he shook his head slowly. "You're building something good here. Something clean. I don't belong in that." "Why not?" "Because I'm not clean, Christina." His voice was gentle but firm. "I never will be." He stood and moved toward the door. Christina followed. "Domingo." He paused, hand on the doorknob. "Thank you," she said again, "for everything." He nodded once, then left, the door closing softly behind him. Christina stood there for a long moment, staring at the space where he'd been, feeling something shift in her chest. Not loss exactly, recognition, that sometimes the greatest kindness was knowing when to step back. The coffee shop was warm, busy with the morning rush, people ordering lattes and pastries, laptop screens glowing, conversations blending into comfortable noise. Christina sat by the window, watching Lily and Thomas at the playground across the street. The baby she'd finally started calling him by his name. Michael slept peacefully in the stroller beside her. 5 months had passed since the blizzard. 5 months of rebuilding, healing, living. She'd gotten a better job, administrative work at a nonprofit, normal hours, health insurance. The apartment felt like home now. The children were thriving. Lily had made friends at school. Thomas's nightmares had faded. Michael was growing strong and healthy. Christina had built a life. Not the life she'd imagined, not the life she'd had before, but a life nonetheless. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jerome. "Boss wanted me to let you know. Volkov delivered. Full amount. Interest included." Christina stared at the message, then typed back. "Tell him I said thank you, but I'm donating it." 3 dots appeared. Then, "He'll like that. Where to?" Christina thought for a moment, then replied, "Children's Advocacy Center, the one that helps families in crisis." Jerome's response was immediate. "Perfect. I'll make sure it's anonymous." Christina set her phone down and took a sip of her coffee, watching her children play. Lily was pushing Thomas on the swing, both of them laughing, faces bright with joy. They looked like children who'd never known fear. Christina knew better. Knew the nightmares still came sometimes. Knew the trauma lived in small ways. Thomas's fear of loud noises, Lily's need to check door locks, Michael's clinginess when Christina left the room. But they were healing, and so was she. The door to the coffee shop opened, bringing a gust of cold air and a familiar figure. Domingo stepped inside, shaking snow from his coat. His eyes scanned the room automatically, landing on Christina almost immediately. He looked surprised to see her. Then something else pleased, maybe. Careful. Christina raised her coffee cup slightly in greeting. Domingo approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance from her table. Mind if I sit? Please. He sat, ordering black coffee when the waitress appeared. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the children through the window. They look good, Domingo said finally. They are good, Christina smiled. Lily made honor roll. Thomas joined a soccer team. Michael's sleeping through the night. And you? Christina considered the question. I'm good too. Actually good. Not just surviving. I'm glad. More silence. Not awkward. Just present. I heard about Volkov's payment, Domingo said. Jerome told me what you're doing with it. It felt right. Christina watched Michael sleep. Using money that came from pain to help prevent more pain. Closing the circle. Domingo nodded slowly. That's good thinking. I learned from someone. Christina met his eyes. Someone who showed me that power matters most when you use it to protect people who can't protect themselves. Domingo's expression flickered, surprised, touched, guarded. I'm not sure I deserve that much credit. I'm not sure you get to decide what you deserve. Christina's voice was gentle but firm. You saved my children's lives. You gave us space to heal. You asked for nothing in return. That matters, Domingo. Whether you acknowledge it or not. He looked away, jaw tight. I did what anyone should have done, but you're the one who actually did it. Christina reached across the table, resting her hand briefly on his. Thank you. For everything. For then. And for stepping back when we needed space. Domingo looked down at where her hand had touched his, something complicated crossing his face. You're doing well. Really well. I'm proud of you. Will I see you again? Christina asked. Maybe. Domingo stood, leaving money on the table for his untouched coffee. But probably not as much. You're building something clean, Christina. Something good. I don't want to complicate that. What if I don't think you'd complicate it? Domingo smiled small, genuine, sad. Then you're kinder than I deserve. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back. If you ever need anything at all, you know how to reach me. I know. Take care of those kids. Always. He left, disappearing into the winter morning, and Christina watched him go. Not with sadness or longing, but with gratitude and understanding. Some people entered your life like storms, violent, transformative, temporary. They changed everything, then moved on, leaving you fundamentally altered, but ultimately free. Domingo Duran had been her storm, and she'd survived. More than survived, she'd learned that she was stronger than she'd known, that asking for help wasn't weakness, that accepting kindness wasn't debt, that building a new life from ruins was possible. Across the street, Lily waved frantically, calling Christina to come watch her go down the slide. Thomas was already climbing the ladder. Michael stirred, ready to wake. Christina gathered her things, paid her bill, and stepped out into the cold. The snow was falling again, gentle this time, beautiful rather than threatening. The kind of snow that transformed the world without trying to erase it. She crossed the street to her children, and when Lily grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the playground, Christina went willingly, because this was her life now. Not perfect, not without scars, but hers. Chosen, built, fought for, and that made all the difference. The storm had revealed what she was capable of surviving. The aftermath had taught her what she was capable of becoming. Power showed who you protected. Fear was loud. Responsibility was quiet. And sometimes, the most dangerous man in the room was the one who decided a line would never be crossed again, then stepped back when his work was done. Christina looked up at the sky, watching snowflakes fall like small miracles, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because the world was safe, but because she finally believed she could handle whatever came next. And her children playing, laughing, alive were proof that believing mattered. The road that had almost ended everything had instead led her here, to this moment, to this life, to herself. And that was enough. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.
А все равно, как бы, ну, сути дела не меняет, как бы зарплата плюс-минус везде там, ну, больше, чуть меньше. Как бы, и, наверное, это все, вот эта общая ситуация, наверное, у многих привела, во-первых, сфера развлечений, да, всякие там кредиты и так далее, настолько загоняют каждого в задницу человека. И об этом на самом деле никто так-то не говорит. Какое количество сейчас, допустим, даже в те же сложные времена такие, когда вот сейчас идет там специальная военная операция, да, где люди вообще умирают, в принципе, за какую-то сумму денег. Ну, то есть, какая мотивация, то есть, у мужика идти, типа, на войну, воевать и, ну, как бы заработать денег? Потому что он вот в обычной жизни не понимает, типа, как реализовать себя. Ну, он понимает, что он может пойти работать на какую-то работу, где зарплаты его все равно не будет хватать. Как бы тут тоже двойственная сторона. Хорошо, когда она есть, плохо, когда ее нету. Да, вот это маленькая даже зарплаты. Но морально-то ты все равно подавлен. Ты понимаешь, да, я там пойду туда, но как бы смысла мне этого не принесет большого. Да, у меня там станет, если я вообще не работаю и буду работать за 50 тысяч, хорошо, что они у меня есть, я смогу там покушать себе купить, но это же дизмораль. Когда ты заходишь в интернет и видишь, как люди там в Дубае летают, покупают себе огромное количество автомобилей какие-то, ну, много всего такого, что ты за эту зарплату себе никогда в жизни позволить не сможешь. И как человеку оставаться морально, типа, сильным? Что ему нужно делать? Ну, наверное, во-первых, это, наверное, все от семьи исходит, да? То есть, какая семья у тебя, как она построена. Если ты один живешь, это сложно, да, ты будешь сам себя, но у тебя, опять-таки, возможно, ну, родители, если есть, которые, друзья, поддержат тебя в какой-то момент, хотя бы просто отвлекут тебя от этих мыслей. А если у тебя, к примеру, там, семья, жена, к примеру, да, есть дети, то тут, наверное, поддержка только от них исходит какая-то. Вот. Чтобы не упиваться в своих мыслях о том, что какая нынче сложная жизнь. И, наверное, других-то вариантов, в принципе-то, и нету. Какие вот еще варианты, в принципе, изменить, поменять свою жизнь настолько, чтобы она была, ну, казалась тебе удачной, да, реализованным себя в жизни, в чем-то. В чем, вот как проявляется на самом деле у нас реализованность? Наверное, у 90% случаев это финансовое благополучие, финансовая независимость. Это, наверное, одно из таких ключевых моментов, когда человек, наверное, считает себя реализованным, да, в этой жизни. То есть, как добиться этого? То есть, с учетом того, что даже возьмем нашу страну, да, сколько миллионов людей здесь живет, как каждому добиться этого результата? Непонятно. И с каждым годом просто ситуация становится все хуже и хуже. Все дорожает, люди зарабатывают либо столько же. Ну, даже если они зарабатывают столько же, на самом деле этого все уже недостаточно. К чему это все приведет на самом деле? В оконцове, наверное, мир погрязнет в большую депрессию в какую-то. Какие-то войны, возможно, или еще что-то еще больше глобальных таких вещей, которые не приведут ни к чему хорошему на самом деле. Поддержка каждого человека именно для того, чтобы он держался, наверное, морально, заключается в том, что, ну, наверное, дом, в который ты приходишь, должен быть крепостью твоей, да, что это единственное должно быть место, где ты будешь чувствовать себя под защитой. Для этого было придумано, наверное, своя пещера изначально, потом свои какие-то чумы, палатки различные, да, потом все это превратилось. На данный момент это у нас дома, квартиры, в которые мы приходим и должны ощущать себя в безопасности, чтобы можно быть немного морально расслабленным с учетом того, что ты выходишь каждый день на работу, на улицу, и все равно давление вот это вот, оно все присутствует. Когда ты заходишь в магазин, видишь цены эти, да, и так далее, не можешь себе что-то там приобрести, позволить на ежедневной основе, это откладывает большой, наверное, отпечаток. Не, наверное, а точно. И поэтому, когда возвращаясь домой, ты чувствуешь, вот хотя бы есть типа уголок того места, куда ты можешь прийти. Уголок на самом деле человеку много тоже не надо. Можно хотеть большего, но на самом деле человеку одному много не надо. Да? Ему нужно спальное место, спокойное место, где можно подумать. Ну, это когда ты один, к примеру, да? Когда у тебя есть семья, к примеру, ты приходишь домой, опять-таки, и тут хотя бы, да, поговорить о каких-то вещах. Просто об отрешенных вещах, наверное. И, возможно, при этих же условиях у тебя и появляется какая-то дополнительная мотивация для реализации себя. А когда у тебя нету ничего, вот это уже становится проблемой. И это у многих на самом деле. Что значит не иметь ничего? Тут, наверное, самое главное, дизмораль у человека еще возникает при том, что это уже, наверное, где-то в глубине души даже она возникает при даже хорошей финансовой подушке такой, которая у тебя есть, хороших финансовых деньгах, да, то есть, но нету вот внутреннего ощущения, к примеру, дружбы, семьи, любви и так далее. Это уже отдельно на самом деле разговор, потому что мы, вот, к примеру, можем взять, как сейчас вот Новстрой, если кто-то смотрит, насколько тяжело обладать такими финансами и не иметь, по сути, ничего. Ни друзей, ничего не иметь. Так главное это получается для бедных главное деньги, для богатых главное какое-то внутреннее ощущение нужности, не из-за денег. Вот такое вот. И это борьба какая-то такая и вот эти два слоя общества, богатые и бедные, они друг друга не понимают. На самом деле из-за этого, возможно. Потому что богатый человек, он уже не смотрит на деньги, он не считает эти деньги. Ему важно внутреннее вот это вот ощущение того, что он нужен без них даже. Это как Тони Старку сказали: а кто ты без костюма? На вот это я филантроп, тудым-сюдым, он сказал, да? Так и человеку, у которого много денег, ты задашь вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Ну, что ты представляешь себе без денег? Вот и это, наверное, возможно, таких людей богатых, как вот, например, там Новстрой, задав ему этот вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Он на него ответить-то и не сможет. Обратная сторона людей бедных, да, вот если мы посмотрим, человеку